Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic. What is a red flag from an employer that people might not immediately recognize as a red flag? A couple old senior partners, lots of young employees and nothing in between. That means there's no opportunity to move up, they can't get people to stay, and can't get lateral transfers. They work young folks for as long as they can, and the young folks leave once they figure out the company sucks. That's a fantastic distinction, and one I was coming in here to make, albeit for different reasons. It could also mean a couple of other things, none of them are good. Their processes are so unique / non-transferable, they hire young out of college because anyone established in the industry would reject them. They hire young because the pay is shit. They hire young because they assume young folks won't know any better. Oh well. My last dev job was all of this to the letter. We call that the 24/24 plan. Hire 24-year-olds, pay them 24 Kelvin /YR, work them 24 hours a day. And repeat. That's what they love about these 24-year-olds, man. Company gets older, they stay the same age. Actually, the nice thing about hiring 24-year-olds is that there are 20 of them. Everybody is very young in a very old company. I'm working in a company that's decade old, but everyone has been in the company for about 4 to 5 months maximum. Only the hour has been there for 7 to 8 years. And honestly, with the shit they are pulling off, I can see why people don't stay even to complete their probation period. Give us the hot goss, internet stranger. Don't leave us hanging. Had an interview somewhere, they offered 20 to 23 starting. Being new in this field, when they asked how much I was expecting to be paid, I said, well, you guys are offering 20 to 23 starting, and being new in the field, I think 20 would be good. Their response was, oh well, that's kind of a red flag for us. Usually when someone starts with us, they'll say, I'll take $17 until I can prove to you that I'm worth the $20, so you'll see why we're hesitant. My response then, why would you offer $20 at your low end? I didn't get a call back. I can't imagine they would actually believe someone would buy that. It sounds so phony. Thing is, I could believe it. I think they are an incredibly abusive company that was trying to hone in on someone with high desperation and low self-esteem who'd go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I'll take 14 an hour, that is, if you have me, please, I didn't mean to cheat you, mister. Boss sir, I'd never do that to you, sir. Then they'd hire you on for 9 an hour and have crazy impossible demands that they coach you into attempting with. I mean, you don't have to do it, but well, if you're not a team player. Or I guess we were right about you. This is a flag so red, that it's dripping blood. They claim that overtime isn't mandatory and workers stay longer by choice. Our deadlines make no sense. We work hard, but play hard around here. The kindest thing an hour person has ever done for me was be truthful in an interview when I asked what the typical work week looked like. It was a new manufacturing facility and they were getting off the ground, and they said typically 60 to 70 hours weeks were expected. Made my decision much easier between that and another job. The kindest thing an hour person ever did for me was come in during a second interview to grab some coffee, then she reminded the interviewer he needed to grab something in another room to get my onboarding paperwork started. The moment the door closes behind him, the hour person just goes, don't take this job. I mean, if you really need the money, it's work, but it's not worth it. She started to tell me a bit about what sucks, super long, erratic hours, wage theft, other dubious stuff, but the interviewer came back in. I took the paperwork home with me, asked around and did some research about the company and never got back to them. So thank you, random hour lady, dodged a bullet because of her. Also one of the only times I have much positive to say about our. That was like my first day with EA at their campus with our leading the tour. Here is the game library where you can get games, here is the arcade, here is the full restaurant where you can get breakfast, lunch and dinner. I commented that it was kind of cool that this was all here. She deadpanned something back along the lines of, ask yourself why we have all this. They why of course, was you were paid flat rate and you worked 10-hour days where they would give you dinner vouchers, and you worked weekends by choice, but the rest of the team will be here, but it's up to you whether or not you show up. When you don't get a review until you ask for a raise. Then, all of a sudden, your work is being questioned and you're being berated. Yep. Going through this right now. 2 years working for the company and I asked for a raise. Now suddenly I have the owner's wife all over me digging into everything I have done and just making my life miserable. I'd find another job then give my notice. If they ask why you're quitting, say according to your wife I can't do anything right. The job title says they're looking to hire rock stars. Or ninjas or gurus or any other dumb buzzwords. I've seen superheroes a ton recently. Vigilantes don't get paid, they do it for the way it makes them feel. What do you do? I'm a rock star. Oh, so you mean you shred guitar and rail lines of blow on tour buses? No, I mean like, I only get 2 10-minute breaks and work mandatory overtime. Oh. No, I mean I've got a brand new house on an episode of Cribs, and a bathroom I can play baseball in, and a king-size tub big enough for 10 plus me. When they refuse to tell you what your starting salary would be, or when they just avoid the question altogether. Like I didn't apply to the job to be a part of some family work culture, I came here to get a job and be paid. Is money the only reason you work? Yes. Yes it is. Tell them no, but I'm really passionate about the possibilities that having money opens up. Like paying my rent and not starving. Asking if I planned to have children in the interview, I was 19. I don't think an interview is the proper place to birth a child anyway. Do you have any other talents? Lies down and goes into labor. Illegal in the US. Yes, definitely illegal, but it was Texas 8 years ago and I was 19 and dumb and answered honestly with a yes. I was 22 when I was asked in depth about my marriage, wore a ring to the interview, and then whether or not I wanted kids. I was taken aback and unfortunately answered truthfully that possibly in the future we would. No call back. Ended up being a good thing. Turns out the owner was nuts and prone to tantrums and weird freakouts. Shot himself in the head there at the office one day years prior to the interview. It was a failed attempt. Bullet dodged literally and metaphorically. Asking if you are somebody who's willing to put in the time to make sure deadlines are met / work is done, or if you're the type of person who leaves when the workday is finished. This is generally corporate speak for we will be forcing you to work unpaid overtime. So you don't hire enough staff, or you don't manage your time effectively. The type of person who leaves when the workday is finished. Absolutely not. I like to leave 5 minutes early to beat traffic in the parking lot. Sir, this is a work from home job. Oh, I love answering that question in interviews. I've given up trying to spin it as a positive. Do you like finishing tasks, or do leave when the workday is finished? Me, if you were to ring a lunch bell right now, I'd leave this interview. I think the diplomatic response would be along the lines of, there has to be a balance. If missed targets are normal working practice, and crunch periods are an expected part of the operation, there is a managerial failing that needs addressing rather than people on the coalface picking up the slack. However, for genuine unforeseen crises, of course putting in extra effort is the right thing to do. You can usually use that to elicit more information from the interviewer. If they say yeah, we expect unpaid overtime, then you swipe the fucking biscuits and head for the door immediately. There's a misery wall when walking into work. When you pass a certain point in the building, the feeling changes significantly. If you know, you know. Yes. I was interviewing at Wayfair, in the corporate office. I was in their normal waiting room, everything was fine and dandy. Then I was sent to sit outside an office near the back of the place where my interviews were going to be held. I sat there 3 minutes, looked around at people, had a sense of dread, and left. I walked out and told the receptionist I can't do this here. It's not what I want, and left. I got called 3 times after that asking if I wanted to reschedule. They seemed way desperate. My interview experience with Wayfair was by far the worst I've ever had. This was 3 years ago, and I still get annoyed just thinking about it. First red flag was that I had to pay for parking, which is not cheap in Boston. I was expecting them to validate, but I had to shell out over $20. When I got to the front desk, I had to wait for 20 minutes before being brought back. By the time I got to the conference room, I noticed that almost everyone was younger than me and most likely right out of college. The hour rep pointed out the beer tabs and free snacks, which may seem cool initially, but I got the feeling this was one of those places that expected you to stay late with after-hours mandatory fun. We passed a huge conference room with more than 100 people, and I was told it was an orientation. That either meant the turnover was incredibly high, or they were hiring way too many people and layoffs were likely months away. According to the thermostat, the conference room where I had my interview was almost 80 degrees. I was in a full suit in the middle of the summer. Nobody seemed to notice or care during the entire interview. There were also no other offices or cubicles on the floor since Wayfair had the brilliant idea of making everyone work on an open floor including the CEO. Half of the people were standing at tables with half a dozen other workers while the other half sat in lines next to each other with no dividers. You'd have more privacy at a Starbucks. To make it extra awkward, the conference room was all glass and there were 4 or 5 people who were facing me directly on the other side. This was extremely distracting to me and the interviewers. The first person interviewing me was late, as were all the rest, and the TV they were using for video conferencing did not work. IT took 15 minutes to set it up, and the girl who helped fix it apologized to me profusely. I couldn't really blame her though, because since it was apparently her first day. Before the interview started, I was given a list of the people I'd be interviewing. I did my homework, and took notes on all of them so I could have a leg up. Every single one was a senior manager with an Ivy League degree, all of whom only worked for consulting companies before coming to Wayfair. They all looked to be around 22 to 25 years old. Of the 5, only one of them didn't come off as an arrogant entitled ass. I got the sense that they were interviewing me to help them practice on interviewing skills. Every single person read from a list of questions on a page that was given to them by hour, and they didn't engage with me at all. They'd ask a question seemingly at random, wait for my answer, then move to the next one. By the 4th person I started getting a migraine. I should have left at that point, but I figured I'd stay to the end. The 4th guy was by far the biggest douche of the bunch. Unbeknownst to me, he came in with a case study which was similar to the ones I'd worked on in grad school. In grad school we had a week or 2 working with a group to come up with a solution. This guy made me read all 3 pages while he watched in silence. Then he got up to the whiteboard and basically asked me what I would do in this situation. The study was extremely vague, as they often are, and I had almost no context. I gave it a shot, but it was clear that I wasn't telling him what he wanted to hear despite no wrong answers. He admitted to me that this was the most important part of the interview and that people are generally more prepared. When I asked how could anyone possibly prepare for these, he said they normally hire people coming from consulting companies and they coach their employees beforehand. I'm in logistics/supply chain management, and I've never in my career heard of or seen this in an interview. As I was leaving, the hour rep said she'd call me in a day. To her credit, she did to let me know I wasn't being considered. Oddly enough, she actually had some feedback for me, mostly negative. According to her, I didn't do well on the case study and they didn't think I'd be a good fit for their culture. I have kids and didn't live in the city. After she was done being smug, I asked her if she wanted feedback from me. She said we normally don't get feedback from candidates, but go ahead. For the next 10 minutes I brought up everything I mentioned above and more. Even if she had given me an offer, I would have outright refused regardless of the salary. She thanked me for my time and that was the last I heard from them. A month later another manager from my current company took a job at Wayfair. He lasted 2 weeks. Working for Walmart it was like a misery gradient, every step towards the back of the store and mental screams would echo with each step. I didn't stay there long.